Welcome to the story summary section of the League videos. I had the rules and intros before this, so please go watch those. I reused this template just because I like this picture that I took. This is pretty much me going through the stories that people are going to be rooting for, hopefully rooting for, because I think it'll be pretty nice and pretty cool. Who's gonna talk about my stories if I don't talk about them? But it's pretty much just summary, inspirations, and some other things. Let's get into it. Disclaimer though, most, if not all of my stories take place in fantasy worlds similar or different from ours, never actually ours. Also, important characters have names while extras have names of states or cities except Dakota. For the first half of that, I'm an action fantasy guy, so most of my stories do not take place in the real world. I also don't want to do research, so I just say, hey, fuck it. It's similar, it's adjacent, parallels, some shit. If you want realism, if you want me to talk about Michigan or Georgia, I'm sorry, that's not what I do. For the second half, I thought it would be a tidbit to add because I started using the names of states and cities for extras who don't really matter, so they might die off or never come back, but it would feel wrong if they didn't fucking have a name, so I just went with names and cities. Dakota is a character from Units who I made before this rule, so just as a little disclaimer. The first story, which these are in alphabetical order, is Angelic Heroes. James, a lazy boy, is a big fan of the book Angelic Heroes, and in it there's different characters fighting with living armor, and he ends up finding out that that is real. However, a character not from the books, Adira, meets him and pretty much forces him to drag back / arrest the other Udians, which is their race, who have come to Earth. And the problem is he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to be a part of that type of life. So the Udians are the race that she's called, and they are pretty much living armor. Think of Tony Stark and Jarvis. If Jarvis wasn't AI and actual living being. Also not Vision. Action, comedic, slight mecha, that's why it's slight mecha, and then fantasy. Issei is here mostly just because that's who I think of, because James has brown hair and the whole armor thing and things like that. In terms of like the other themes of the lewdness and shit, that is probably not gonna be there. More than likely not gonna be there. I have two categories. I need to remind myself because I want to categorize every story from this point on. I call my stories either serious stories or fuck around stories. Angelic Heroes is more leaning towards the serious stories. It's not fully serious, but it's not as serious as some other future stories. But it's also not around, which around means I'm not thinking too much. I'm having a good time. A lot of shit doesn't matter as much as the more serious stories. Banco, which is more of a f***around story, is about, technically it's called Nikki Banco, but I just put it in the B's for Banco. It's about Nikki Banco finding out from a girl that he has the blood of Lucifer, the Lucifer sons. It's very original, right? But it's about him going through that life of getting to know his powers and different things about the demon world and even gods and things like that. Maybe some conspiracies, who knows? It's more of a f***around story where less things matter, and it's very comedic there. I went through multiple of these. I still have not put comedy up there, but it's definitely comedic because the MC mostly doesn't care, but he has like a more serious side to him. Shin Mai Mao is here not because it was inspired by it. Banco is inspired by it. I think of Shin Mai Mao. I think Shin Mai Mao needs a little bit more praise. Maybe perverted, but it's fucking, I love Basara, man. But yeah, it's a harem fantasy. As you will see, I am a somewhat harem guy, so if you don't like harems, I'm sorry. Also not sorry. Border Patrol, I think the best way to explain this one is the game on the bottom left, which is called Mirror 2 Project X. I played it from the first story. I thought it would be like a continuous storyline of this guy who interrogates these different monster girls who come through these portals from different realms, and it'll be like a harem and comedy / live, whatever. I thought it would be more like that, and it didn't go there. It was just random f***ing stories. Like the next one was like in a desert, some forest or whatever, or it was like a crazy Chinese world or some I don't know. It was weird, but I thought it would follow the first story, and that's why I got the idea for Border Patrol of just this team interrogating these women and other creatures who come through the portals. It's more of a around slice of life, which I should have added. Monster Girls comedic, a little bit of harem in there. The pink hair is Generosa, the captain of the main character's squad, who his name is Narse. And Frace is the first monster girl who comes over. She is an ice queen, fully made of ice. When she melts, she fucking like pretty much turns younger and things like that. She's the ruler of a kingdom, but she also doesn't want to be. Kind of like Pina Colada from Gate. Brawl Institution is about a boy named Anthony Beckons who wants to join the Brawl Institution, and he has a lot of fun in doing so because he's very energetic and pretty much wants to be a fighter. There's really no buts or anything like that. It's just like a slice of life. Some problems come around which are kind of weird. If it's a story where it focuses on not just him but his group of friends, so they go through their own little problems and things like that. For example, one of them, Riley Styles, is like top 3 in his state. He becomes friends with her and she has her own problems, things like that. Very chill. It's pretty much like in the middle, or not, I wouldn't say in the middle, it's more of around. When I came up with this in high school, I thought it was my best written story at the time because every time I came back to it, I laughed and I loved the interactions with it and things like that. At this point, it needs some tweaking, especially with the how the Brawl Institution works, but for the most part, it's pretty decent, I feel like. Iki Tosin is only here just because I couldn't find anything else. Maybe I could have brought Bento or some shit, but every time I see fucking Iki Tosin, it just seems like it's random fights. I know that it more than likely has its own story, but I never watched it, but it feels like random fights. Floor Guardian. Floor Guardian is a collection of stories of different characters who come to this battle tower to be hired into it, right? The picture is just like in Pokemon Coliseum, because I every time I think of a battle tower, I think of that one. But the story, at first it was gonna be more of a singular linear story, but I thought about it and I just turned it into like a collection of stories, and it's different people coming to get hired by this battle tower, but like the boss of it is this infamous crime boss who a lot of people and countries kind of want dead or captured or whatever. And the people of this battle tower protect him, whether they care if he's infamous or not. Some just want money, some maybe care about him, things like that. Slice for Life is a question mark because I thought about it recently. I think it would be very intriguing to go into that world of like their crime and different aspects of their lives in the tower and things like that. This one's mostly from a dream, pretty much all from a dream. A random dream where I was having fun with some people in this battle tower, and the one word that I could remember was like 74th, right? And then at first this story was called 74th Floor Guardian, and it's gonna be about Connor, who's the 74th Floor Guardian, things like that, but it's just a collection of stories. For Goodness Sake. For Goodness Sake is a story about a very nice main character named... What was his name again? Fuck. I don't remember. If I remember, I'll have the other flash on the screen. About the main character who is a very nice guy, and he goes around helping different people, whether they're good or bad, and he pretty much converts some people from bad to good. And there's just constant people who don't like how good he is, and they just want to like fuck him over, right? I got this idea from the manga called NTR Isekai. Now, before you leave or judge or whatever, that's the manga page that's on screen. But I read this one to give it a chance because the summary described it as pretty much bros over hoes, right? And I was like, you know, surely not all of them could be bad. Maybe not all NTR could be bad. I was very wrong because eventually the main premise, it wasn't really bros over hoes. It was just the MC just being a piece of shit, pretty much. But the first half of it had potential because the guy who was bad, who was fucking over the guy named Kenji, he had a chance to like reflect, and it would have been so nice if he did reflect and like he stopped doing it, things like that, because Kenji had like a whole rage moment. He forgot all his kindness and he was out to kill him and things like that. It was pretty cool, but then immediately he reset the world. He just did the same shit again. So I was like, man, fuck this story. Pretty much a lesson at the end of the day. If it has NTR in it, the guy was into some weird shit. But For Goodness Sake, it's not gonna be like that, and the MC pretty much tries to be good the whole way through. He converts people from bad to good, so it's pretty much a feel-good story, mostly like a fuck around, maybe a little bit serious, you know, things like that. Harakiri Dojo. From my memory, I didn't have any real inspirations from this. I have Kenichi here, but didn't watch it. I still haven't watched it. But Harakiri Dojo is about the main character, Haraku, who wants to be the master of his dojo, the defense dojo. However, he has a lot of problems because he is a very angry person, and it gets worse and worse as time goes on. Even just like a kid laughing in the direction of his dojo. Not even laughing at the dojo, but in the direction of the dojo. but he's gonna see it like as a mock, as a tease at him or the dojo, so he gets mad, right? And the whole premise is him trying to get over that anger, find the root of it, and like pretty much go through anger management. There is like a twist that I don't want to spoil, so I won't get too much into it. That's why the psychological is like a question mark, maybe not, you know. The fantasy is there mainly because they have this aura and it's in every single person in their world, but they have to like train it to get it out. It will be explained more in this story. Jack of all trades might be my favorite that I'm writing right now. The idea is that this kid, Ned Uno Yoshi, is pretty much feeling very useless and feels like he's not needed by anyone in the world until he gets this advice from a teacher. From that advice, he decides to try to learn every skill in the world, or at least as many as he can. As he grows up, he has to deal with different skills, but also different people who are learning these skills. There's even the antagonist who, for some reason, wants to take away people's skills and things like that, like erase their minds of them, and that's why the whole magic is there. In terms of their ages, Ned is only a kid right now because he did not win a tournament and Guri won it for him, and so that's why it's only art of him as a kid, but he's gonna get older, pretty much. Him alongside the two girls here, Orin and Guri, they're going to get older and is gonna pretty much progress into different age groups and things like that. Eminence is here because the story was definitely inspired by it. Now, at the time, I wanted more anime slash harems like Eminence. The harem behind Jack of all trades is that he is a very cool, charismatic guy. I don't know about cool, because I feel like comparing him cool would be like comparing him to other generic isekai protagonists. He's very charismatic and very wholesome and funny and things like that. These different women gather around him, and the guy who is taking away skills is a part of a secret organization, and the girls find out, but they don't want Ned to find out because, you know, live happily, peacefully, so that he doesn't have to deal with it. So that's the whole Eminence part behind it. They're handling that shit pretty much in the shadows while Ned is handling his skill set. Maybe he'll learn about it, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll throw his 2 cents or his hands in that shit. Now, King's Rule, which is my baby. King's Rule is about Brick Benson, a boy who wants to be a king, but it is definitely not as easy as he maybe once thought. He has to deal with a lot more physical and mental issues, dealing with people's problems, establishing a kingdom, dealing with his own emotions of like anger and things like that. So it's this whole like, maybe I haven't heard the phrase coming of age in a while, but maybe it's this coming of age story where he starts off as a kid, he turns a teenager, he does these great things, and he tries to become a king, right? That's where the whole fantasy adventure comes from. There's things called the King's Mark on his chest, which is the sign of king candidates, but he can lose it. It's not something that you're born into. It's something that you earn from wanting to be a king and having faith in people, right? And so he goes through his journey trying to become a king and not lose that mark. Hitman Reborn is here because King's Rule wasn't inspired by it, but it was heavily motivated, because I'm pretty sure at the time I was not writing King's Rule before I watched Hitman Reborn, and then I watched it and I was like, I felt very motivated, like I gotta get on it, because you know they have themes of loyalty and things like that. It was pretty cool, pretty good. Love story, Name in Progress. This one is just because I got tired of watching or reading stories where the man has to do everything, the man, the women are independent and shit like that. I was like, sorry, my throat was getting dry. But anyway, men. I was just getting tired of stories where the man had to be the one protecting and shit like that. So I was like, I'm gonna write a love story where the woman is pretty much the main focus and she's the one dominating slash protecting the guy, things like that. So it's about Rose, who is a crime boss. You know, typical crime boss. ASMR, am I right? Crime boss who is very rigid, and she's kind of losing control of her group until she meets this guy who she falls in love with, Hugo, who is more emotionally open than her, and you know, he helps her with that side of her group while she does the fighting and the leadership and things like that. Girls of the Wilds is here. That's the little manga because it starts off similar where the girls are protecting the guy because the guy is very weak and getting bullied and things like that, but it does turn into a story where of course the guy gets stronger, not stronger than them, but he gets stronger to protect himself. And the first arc is great, but then I dropped after that because it got worse. Amazon Swordswoman is just here because, you know, Amazon's like, that's the whole idea, man. The Amazons are great, man. Modern day, name in progress. A collection of stories of like, I guess, collection of scenarios that could happen in real life, but the people have powers. Pretty much an exaggerated in modern day situations. It was heavily inspired by, I mean, it was multiple things that I've heard throughout life, but this with the Drake and Kendrick beef, it definitely got me motivated to write it more because I love the JJK art of this. It was so good, so funny. It just got me on that. Like, for example, the first story is between two characters named A1 and Alpha, and they're settling some where one character may not be what he pretends to be, but then the other is like calling him out / setting him straight because he's like a merc or some shit. The Smitty videos here is because that also helped the idea of this because Smitty, especially in the animations, he has like the whole prediction power and things like that, and Cryos, the other icy guy, has like ice powers or something, and I thought, you know, it was pretty cool. It helped the idea of people with powers in modern day and things like that. That's the whole idea of it, but it's a collection of scenarios and stories about them. Hello, I am hot off of the last stories explanation, and I just said fuck it, I'm gonna continue it. This is the final 15, you know, equaling 30 of my stories and their descriptions. I advise you going to watch the other one. Now, Mount Fontaine is about Brian, who is the strongest in the world, and he suddenly one day gets challenged by a bunch of different people. But the problem is he doesn't know why they're challenging him. He's trying to figure out why. He also has to get over his anger problems because he's also a short-tempered individual, and so he can't see things clearly. It's kind of hard for him because in times he will just talk with his fist and try to kill somebody, but it won't work this time around. Dragon Ball is here because Mount Fontaine is the Dragon Ball of my stories because the strength levels are kind of crazy. Brian can pretty much punch a mountain in half, and everyone else has crazy powers too, so that's pretty much what it is. Multiverse is about a guy, Jonah, who has powers, but he doesn't know where they come from. One day, this slime comes out of a void and tries to absorb Jonah. As we go through the story, they find out their world is not alone, and there are several other worlds. In those worlds, there are other Jonahs who have powers, and he gets his powers from them. Overall, this story is where my what ifs go. The people in this world are spectators of the other story worlds. The void spits out the slime and other things because it wants to erase this world, which shouldn't exist. This character, Kaya, that I named her, is also a part of that world. Fights alongside Jonah. She has other copies of her in other worlds too. The thing about the opposite of like an anchor being from Marvel, who is like an all-important figure, but at the same time, they're not deemed important by the void. I have what ifs of other stories. I have God of War Asuke, who is from Sword Days. The idea is that he's gonna make an appearance in this story along with what other what ifs, and these characters, Jonah and Kaya, and anyone else has to deal with them. That's pretty much gist of it. Pam's Pressure is a story of Pam, who was in her normal world where like a handful of people had powers. It was never explained until they disappeared, but then one day she finds out she has powers, and some guy from another world, Alistair, comes in, tells her about this other world that the other humans with powers are going to help their world, which is in need, and so he brings her back to his world, and she meets their queen. They help fight villains and all that shit. Pam is kind of an idiot because I wanted her to be different. I was tired of seeing the usual male power fantasy, so I was like, you know, I kind of want to see a woman doing all this shit. And she starts off as an idiot, but with her powers she realized she can get smarter. She can see pressure points inside of other people, and when she hits them they feel tremendous pain and things like that. Think of the Byakugan, that's why Naruto's here. Solo Leveling is just a decent comparison, especially the first arc that's going to happen in Pam's Pressure. It's similar to one of the arcs in Solo Leveling, so it's just girl power fantasy. She gets a little harem. I should have put the villainous anime where the girl's kind of an idiot. She's gonna have maybe one or two females, but it's mostly gonna be a male harem. Pretty cool, pretty fun. Quaid's Second Life is about Quaid, who dies as a young kid in his world around the age of 4, maybe 5, because of a sickness. His body was very weak. He ends up dying, and he gets reincarnated in this other world, but he's unfortunately sick again because unbeknownst to him, he has too much magical power that his body can withstand, and so two creatures, goat and the snake, conceals his magic so that he can live a peaceful life. But one day they come back to collect on their payment, and it follows that whole storyline about him getting into shenanigans with the goat and the snake. I will say the goat and the snake, I've been thinking of them in human forms, but I think it's very interesting at least to keep it kind of vague. I don't know if they'll have human forms or just stay in their animal forms or not. Character on the screen is Fasha, also known as the plot armor princess, because she was in this series that I was doing, or she comes onto the scene and just has a lot of plot armor. But in Quaid, she's more of a side character. From the art, you can see that she won a tournament. Next is Redmond Pirates. The Redmond Pirates stars Redmond. I genuinely don't know if that's going to be his last name. It's Redmond who sets out to sea to be as great as his dad, to earn his spot in the Redmond family as the head. He has a bodyguard named Lawrence, and he meets other people that he recruits along the way. He's unapologetically a bad guy. He plays to his family name, being like, "Do you know who the fuck I am?" And he has this famous family red sideburn, pretty much red hair, kind of like Shanks. Partially why I have kind of here. Genuinely, this story started because I was playing Treasure Cruise. Now, if you watch the intro and the rules, you can tell that I am a thinker when it comes to stories, and so it translates into game. I just think of like a story for my teams and my characters in the games, and so I was playing Treasure Cruise, and I pulled Akainu and like Usopp and Zoro, and I was like, I kind of want to make just a random story out of this. Akainu was Lawrence, who is Redmond's bodyguard, and they go about and do shit, you know? I love doing that type of thing. This is very fun for me. Now, Substar, as you could tell by the picture, it shares the same world as Redmond Pirates. It's on the opposite end, where Maurice, the main character, is forced into the Marines, or wherever the equivalent is. In general, police force. He's forced into it because he has a thing called burden, which is that world's powers. And anyone with a burden, at least in his hometown, is forced to use it for good. And he's not a bad guy, but he's forced into the police, and he meets a guy named Houston, who is very energetic, very goofy, chaotic, similar to Luffy, and he really wants Maurice to join his team, which could be a crew, a family, or whatever. He's just trying to recruit people. He left his hometown for this shit. It's a little bit in the early development stages. I haven't thought about too much of his goal of why he's trying to do it. Pretty much they're a duo, while Redmond, both sides are going to be recruiting, and they're going to meet each other on their adventures and shit. Like, I've already thought of this cool first crossover where Redmond is trying to go after some guy who owes the Redmonds money, and Maurice and Houston are going after the same guy who is causing trouble. He took over town using his burden and things like that. I really want to get to it. I kind of hope they eventually win the f***ing league, or at least get runner-up, because I kind of want to get to it, but it's very cool, very interesting to me. The duo, one side good, one side bad, and following both sides. Now, shorts, I feel like I kind of did shorts dirty here, so either put in something, I don't know, maybe pair of shorts or something, but shorts is kind of a placeholder. It's my collection of short stories that I put out there. I've unfortunately deleted them. I probably will put them on my website, but they're a collection of short stories that if they win, I could probably do something, but for the most part, they're a placeholder in the league, because without it, I'll only have 29. That's not even. So until I think of another story, they're here, and if they win, then I'll do something for those short story characters. Sigma Plus. Sigma Plus is about a boy named Jacob and his 3 other friends, Sydney, Ethan, and Leona. They live life in this school where they use signs to fight, and it's become like pretty much a countrywide thing. Pretty much their equivalent to MMA or whatever. They use signs in their fights, so they say like Sigma sign. This was way before the lingo of Sigma was coming out. I fucking hate what they did to Sigma. I thought it was a cool word, and so I used it in my fucking title. That's the gist of it. The 4 main characters all have different goals. For example, Jacob is trying to figure out the origin behind signs. It leads to this professor whose family lineage is behind the development of signs. It just goes from there to school life. J-Stars was the absolute inspiration behind it. At first, Sigma Plus, it was a movie maker thing. Just as like a 2v2 random bullshit of like having people fight. I would just like come up with like the outcomes and the powers, and there was no other determination factor. Like, oh, this guy uses this power, pretty much playing with action figures and shit. It was a movie maker series that I was never gonna release until I just said and just started writing it. I do think this story has one of the best openings, just because it shows who each character is and what their powers is and things like that. I think it's pretty cool. All of my stories are pretty cool until I feel like they're not, and then I rewrite them. Supposed to Rule. Supposed to Rule is about a guy named B. Don't know his name yet. Shit, I might not even know. But a guy named B who gets reincarnated or sucked into this other world. He wanted to be a leader in his world, but since he got sucked into another world, he can't. But he said, fuck it, why not be a leader of this world? So he's trying to be a leader, trying to follow his dream pretty much. And he gets reincarnated as this, well, scratch reincarnation. His soul gets placed in some other guy's body of this other race that a lot of other people don't like. They have like glowing yellow eye and white hair or black hair. They have powers, but they're hated by a bunch of humans and potential other races. And so he's trying to figure out his goal while living in this body, because there may or may not be another inhabitant. Who knows? I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even think about this until now. His race are called numerals, and the men are typically named after a letter and the women are named after numbers. So his right hand is 6 and he's B. He always has a mask with red hair and claws, but you can't see the claws in the picture, of course. Sword Days. Sword Days is one of the OGs. There's 4 OGs, like my big 4 that I was writing since middle school. And that's Sword Days, Barakurai Dojo, Mount Fortane, and Zirin. And all of these stories, it's just special because they're the OG. They're my big 4. But Sword Days stars Asuke. Just put an S in front of it and the Sasuke. Asuke is an elemental born by goddess of lightning. He, like most people in his world who are elementals, don't have feelings. But one day when a fire elemental known as a Heffen kills his mom with an unknown weapon, he suddenly starts to gain feelings and he experiences anger for the first time, and his whole goal is to get revenge. The thing is, right, these weapons never existed before until this random fire elemental attacked them. After that, once Asuke started feeling feelings, he found his sword, which is the bottom left guy, in his room one day, and so he started training. Ever since then, other people have randomly gotten swords and weapons. So it's not just swords, it's random weapons in general, but his whole goal is to get revenge against the fire elemental whose name is Luke, who killed his mother. The top guy, Izzy, who's supposed to be like a feminine man who's in like a short story. I wanted him to get drawn one day, but he's part of that world. And Danielle was a league winner who is quote unquote friends with Isuke, who used to be a mean girl, but she turned good, and her weapon's like a feather blade that can like detach from her handle. And so these elementals, the only thing that can hurt them are the weapons. That's why they've been granted these weapons. We don't know why yet. Maybe it's a thing from the gods. Who knows? Why create people when you want them to hurt each other? I don't know. The Chase. Now, the Chase is pretty new. The premise is that the guy, Daiki, he is the leader of a group who saved a town or like a country, and he's questioning his abilities. He starts an event with his group saying, capture me / chase me. You guys will get a reward while I figure out if I have confidence in myself. And this group is full of women who have their different ideas of a reward, and they all chase him throughout the country, whether it's trying to fight him to capture him. Summary is only here because I could not think of another story at all to compare this to. I actually have not seen a lot of stories where they actually chased the guy, but that's the whole gist behind it. It's supposed to be lighthearted, it's not too serious. I might have like a chase kink or some shit. I don't know. Ever since I was little, I loved the idea of being chased and things like that, but like by a girl, because we had this whole thing in elementary. The girls would play the cops and the guys would be like the robbers, and the girls would chase us. It might have set something off, I don't know, but I like the whole chase thing. I realized I had not had a single story that represented that. That's why this is here. Unlimited is about Stuart and Scott, who were in their normal world, but Scott got Stuart onto this mobile game. After playing it for a while, they got sucked into the mobile game. Now they're in that world as the avatar that they picked. Stuart gets put into his avatar, who's like a monkey man, like Wukong, and then Scott gets put into his avatar, which is like a half and half good and evil being. This one was mostly inspired by Overlord, but also like my idea of kingdom / a court, or like a real life group of best friends, which I have. That's pretty much the whole idea behind it. Power fantasy. I should mention that it's a mobile game and it's a gacha system, and so they're going to have the characters that they rolled for who are loyal to them and things like that. For now, I've gotten off the finish line with the story, and so far Stuart is looking for Scott. Visuals, second to last. Visuals is about Philip and Bella. And as you can tell from the yandere tag, Bella is mad head over heels for Philip, and she's kind of this weird girl who kind of starts to take over Philip's life. At first, his old friends disappeared. He just thought it was because of moving, but maybe something happened. Who knows? He ends up gaining more friends alongside Bella who are female. In the league and in other situations, it's going to be very clear. Philip meets other female friends, and Bella ends up converting their personalities, forcing them to work for her, and Philip has to figure out what the f is going on. Of course, he's not gonna notice it at first. He's gonna slowly come to terms and be like, oh my god, what is happening? From my experience, stories that are solely focused on yanderes never end good. It's either one side ends up dying, or it ends up like in school days. Oh, I never loved you in the first place, I just used you for my goal or some shit. Other than the obvious Mirai Nikki, I hate the ending. However, I will stand on this hill that Yuno is one of the best yanderes because of her constantly winning and constantly resetting reality just to be with him. That is crazy. It's good. I don't know how the fuck this one's gonna end. I mean, the pictures here are from random Google. The left one is from Shimoneta. She's kind of crazy too. Now, the last one, Z-Rings. Z-Rings follows Zir, Albroa, and Ray Everest as they leave their hometown once they become the ripe age of 19, 20 to see the world because their hometown is pretty boring. They want to sightsee, but they make it a challenge. Whoever sees the most interesting things is the winner once they meet back up. So they're going to have a list. They're going to split off once they reach the new country. Unfortunately, things happen on the way. Maybe some things that they can't step away from, and they have to put their 2 cents in. Z-Rings has went through a lot of iterations because at first it was gonna be the typical school magic bullshit, pretty much going through the intricacies of magic and things like that, but I said fuck it. In this world, everyone is born with magic, big and small, it doesn't matter. Zir has this school aura that can copy other people's properties. It doesn't fully copy their magic, and then Ray is a typical fire, but I'm gonna try my best to figure out different ways for him to use it. Now, the elephant in the room, it was absolutely inspired by Fairy Tail for 2 reasons. 1, because I like the designs of Fairy Tail, even though I don't like the actual anime or the story. 2, because when I started watching Fairy Tail, I dropped it and I was like, I want to write my own better Fairy Tail. That was my whole motivation at first. I don't know if I can actually make that happen. A lot of people love Fairy Tail. I'm not gonna completely shit on it because I learned at a certain point it has its place in the world as like a feel-good story, but I don't fully fuck with it. I just fuck with the designs. I really like the designs. That's pretty much all my stories. Maybe one day I'll find a placeholder for shorts, but for now, that's everything. I really hope out of these 30 that you found a favorite to root for. If not, I hope you find a character to root for, which is going to be in the next video, the selections. Every season, I want to talk about each character who comes into the league and talk about who they are and what they do. Similar to these videos, maybe shorter, maybe more edited. That's all my stories for now. Hope you stay tuned and vote for your favorites. Appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.